When everything feels heavy, your job, your dreams, your heart, it's easy to believe you're sinking. But sometimes, the quietest strength is not found in fighting the waves, but in trusting the sea. The storm begins. In the city of Aarhus, Denmark, a young man named Erik sat by his small window, watching the rain slide down the glass. The world outside looked cold, gray, and distant. He had just lost his job at a small cafe near the harbor. His savings were almost gone. And worse, he felt like he was losing himself. Every morning, Erik woke up later than before. His coffee turned cold before he touched it. He stopped calling his friends. The silence in his apartment became louder than any noise outside. It was the kind of silence that made you question everything, your worth, your choices, your future. That he looked at the boats in the harbor, rocking gently in the storm. They seemed calm, even as the wind screamed and the sea roared, and he thought, why can't I be like them? Why do I feel like I'm drowning, while they just float? For a moment, he wished he could disappear, become one of those boats, simple and steady, surviving every wave without breaking. But deep down, Erik knew life wasn't that simple. He whispered to himself, maybe I've already sunk. He didn't know yet, this storm wasn't here to end him. It was here to teach him how to float again. The weight of silence. The silence in Erik's apartment grew heavier each day. It wasn't just the kind of quiet that happens when no one speaks. It was the kind that fills your chest, slow, cold, and thick, like fog that refuses to fade. That he stopped turning on the radio. The music reminded him of mornings that felt alive, mornings that no longer existed. That he stopped opening his curtains. The light hurt his eyes. That he stopped answering messages. The words felt too heavy to type. Sometimes he walked to the harbor at night. The wind there was strong and salty. The waves kept moving, whispering stories that no one could understand. Erik stood there for hours, watching them rise and fall, over and over, as if the sea was breathing. That he wondered if the boats ever got tired of floating. Did they ever want to sink, just to rest for a while? One night, an old fisherman noticed him standing alone by the dock. The man's face was wrinkled and calm, like someone who had lived many storms. He asked quietly, "You come here every night. What are you waiting for?" Erik hesitated. His voice cracked as he answered, "I don't know. Maybe I'm waiting for the storm to stop." The old man smiled, not a big smile, but a knowing one. "Storms don't stop," he said. "You just learn how to stay afloat." The words stayed with Erik long after the man walked away. That he looked at the dark sea again, still wild, still endless. And for the first time in weeks, he took a deep breath. It didn't fix everything, but it was a beginning. The old fisherman's secret. The next morning, Erik returned to the harbor. The sea was calm now, like a mirror holding the sky. The old fisherman was there again, fixing his nets. His hands were rough, his movements slow but steady. The kind of steady that comes from years of storms. Erik walked closer and said softly, "What did you mean last night, about staying afloat?" The old man looked up and smiled. "You think boats stay up because they are strong?" he asked. "No. They stay up because they are built to move with the waves, not against them." He pointed to his small wooden boat, paint peeling, ropes old and worn. See this boat? It's not new. It's not perfect. But it bends, it breathes with the sea. That's why it never sank. Eric listened carefully. The words felt simple, but they sank deep. The fisherman continued, when the wind is strong, I don't fight it. I loosen the sail, let the boat turn. I move with the storm, not against it. That's how you survive. Eric looked at the boat again. That it wasn't big, it wasn't beautiful, but it was still here, floating. That he thought of his own life, all the times he tried to fight every problem, every mistake, every loss. Maybe that's why he always felt like drowning. The fisherman looked at him and said quietly, people are like boats. The moment you stop fighting everything, you start to float again. Eric smiled for the first time in a long while. The sea shimmered under the weak morning sun. Maybe, he thought, staying afloat wasn't about being strong, but about learning how to move gently with what life gives you. That he looked at the old man and whispered, thank you. The fisherman nodded, don't thank me. Thank the sea. It teaches everyone who listens. The lesson of the waves. That evening, Eric sat on the beach again. The waves came and went, slow and steady, like the rhythm of breathing. That he watched them rise, fall, and disappear, only to rise again. No wave ever stayed forever, and no storm lasted too long. For the first time, Eric noticed something beautiful in their motion. Every wave seemed to whisper the same secret. You don't have to win against life. You just have to stay with it. He thought of the old fisherman's words, move with the sea, not against it. It suddenly made sense that he didn't need to fight every failure, every loss, every quiet night that felt empty. That he just needed to breathe through them, to let them pass like waves. A soft wind brushed his face. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang from a fishing boat. The sound was simple, but it reached his heart. That he whispered to himself, maybe I've been trying too hard to control the tide, when I should have just learned how to float. The more he listened to the sea, the more he understood. Every wave was different, some gentle, some wild, but they were all part of the same ocean, just like his feelings, his mistakes, his memories, all part of him. That he picked up a small shell from the sand and held it close. Inside the shell, he could hear a faint echo of the sea. It was as if the ocean was saying, you're still here. You're still floating. And for the first time in months, Eric didn't feel lost. That he felt carried. The boat inside you. The next morning, Eric woke up before sunrise. For weeks, he had slept through mornings, hiding under the weight of his thoughts. But that day felt different. The silence in his room was still there, yet it no longer felt like a cage. It felt calm. That he made a cup of coffee, opened his window, and watched the soft pink light of dawn touch the rooftops. The world was still quiet, but in that quiet, there was life. He thought again about the fisherman's words, move with the sea, not against it. He smiled, thinking, maybe we all have a little boat inside us. Some days, it sails smoothly under the sun. Some days, it faces storms so wild that we think we'll never survive. But the boat is still there, small, strong, and stubborn. Eric realized something simple yet powerful. The sea doesn't ask the boat to be perfect. It only asks it to keep moving. He whispered softly, I am the boat. And I'm still afloat. He took his notebook and wrote down 3 words, still. Floating. Forward. They became his small promise. not to be fearless, not to be perfect, but to keep moving, no matter how slow. The sound of distant seagulls filled the air that he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude, not for what he had lost, but for what had remained. The strength to begin again, and as he looked toward the harbor, he saw the old fisherman's boat leaving the dock, small, steady, and brave against the morning waves. When the wind changes. Days passed, Eric started walking to the harbor again. But now, not to escape that he went there to feel alive, that he noticed things he had never paid attention to before, the smell of salt in the air, the way sunlight danced on the waves, the sound of wooden boats creaking softly, as if they were breathing. 2.1 Afternoon. While sitting on a rock, he watched a group of children playing by the shore. They were building small paper boats and letting them float on the water. Some boats sank quickly, some sailed far before tipping over, but every time a boat sank, the children just laughed, and built another one. Eric couldn't help but smile that he realized how different their hearts were. Adults often stop after failure, but children? They begin again, and again. As if the wind will always change in their favor. He whispered, almost to himself, maybe life isn't about waiting for calm waters. Maybe it's about learning to sail in any wind. He stood up, feeling the cool wind brush against his face. It was the same wind that once made him feel small. But now, it felt like an old friend. For the first time in a long time, Eric didn't fear change. He didn't fear the storms that might come, because he knew, the same wind that pushes you down can also push you forward, if you let it. He closed his eyes and smiled. The wind whispered softly, keep sailing. The harbor of the heart. Weeks turned into months. Winter arrived quietly in Denmark, wrapping the town in a blanket of white. The sea was colder now, and the harbor was covered with thin ice. Still, Eric came to the same spot every morning, holding a warm cup of coffee, watching his breath turn into mist. He didn't come to escape anymore. He came to listen. To the sea, the wind, and his own heart. One morning, he saw the old fisherman again. The man smiled, his eyes shining like calm water. Still floating? He asked. Eric laughed softly. Still floating, he replied. They stood in silence for a moment, both looking at the horizon. The sun was rising slowly, turning the sky into soft gold. The fisherman spoke again. Every sailor needs a harbor, Eric. Not just a place to stop, but a place to remember who he is. Eric nodded, feeling those words settle deep inside him. He thought about how he had always searched for peace somewhere outside. In people, in success, in noise. But real peace, he realized, was something you carry within you. A harbor that moves with you, even through storms. He whispered quietly, maybe the real harbor is the heart itself. The old fisherman smiled again, as if he'd been waiting for Eric to say those words. Exactly, he said. And as long as you have that harbor, you'll never be lost. The sea was calm that day, and so was Eric. The boat that never sank. Spring returned to Denmark, the ice melted, the birds came back, and the harbor was alive again. Eric decided it was time to take his small boat out to sea. The same boat he hadn't touched since the dark days. The sky was bright and blue, the water shimmered softly, like glass. He stepped into the boat and pushed away from the dock. The gentle rocking made his heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like freedom. He rowed slowly at first, the oars cutting through the water with small, steady sounds. the sea welcomed him back. Calm and kind, every stroke felt like a heartbeat. Strong, alive, real. As he reached the open water, he stopped and looked around. There was no land in sight, just sky and sea, endless and quiet. He whispered, "I thought I was drowning once. But maybe I was just learning to float." He closed his eyes and let the boat drift. The wind touched his face. The sun warmed his hands. For the first time, Eric felt no need to control anything. The sea moved, and he moved with it. He understood now, life isn't about avoiding the storms, it's about trusting the boat inside you. The one that never really sank. When he returned to shore, he saw the old fisherman waiting. The man gave him a slow nod and said only one thing, "Welcome back, sailor." Eric smiled. He wasn't the same man who once stood at the harbor, lost and silent. He had found something much greater, not out at sea, but within himself. He looked toward the horizon and whispered his final promise, "Whatever comes next, I'll keep floating." And as the sun dipped below the Danish sky, the waves carried his reflection gently. A quiet man, a steady boat, and a heart that finally learned to sail. That's all for today. I'll make more stories like this in the future. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next one.